Awesome. Well, thanks again for being with us tonight. There are so many friendly faces, both here in our studio with us and online. I am so honored to be able to speak with Munira, Mohammed tonight, and I'm just excited. We haven't officially met yet, but I was in with that celebration that you guys had last Friday, and I'm just really excited to be able to get back to talk with you and hopefully be able to have some good conversation here tonight. So if you want to go ahead, I know we did some minor introductions, but just explain a little bit about what you do with the ACLU and how you played a role maybe also with the coalition as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Eugene. And thank you to everyone here, including Aaron McKain, for inviting me. Again, my name is Munira Mohammed. I'm the policy associate with the ACLU Minnesota. And I've just started there. I've been there for a year. And a lot of my work has been focused at the city council. And we've kind of put together this coalition that's devoted to surveillance advocacy. It's called PostMe, Public Oversight of Surveillance Technology and Military Equipment. And for the past year, close to 9 months, I think, we've been working with Councilmember Fletcher just to get the city's attention and to get the community's attention on these kind of surveillance issues. So the first thing we've done was that facial recognition ordinance, and it just went through, I think it's officially passed into law by now. And then it passed by the council last week. And Aaron is right, it was kind of a sad celebration. So this will definitely add to, my feeling of just winning at that one project. But yeah, that's my background. Yeah, and it's nice to be here.
Yeah, congratulations once again. So we're gonna go ahead and get started talking about your journey. So why did you start to care about race and technology? Where did that kind of start? I know you talked about with the PostMe coalition, aging back to maybe about 9 months, but I'm sure that there was some of that boiling before that. So what does your journey look like with race and technology?
Well, actually, Eugenie, you kind of assumed that I cared about all these things before, and I'm not sure that I did, to be quite honest. Like a lot of the and I can explain, a lot of the population like kind of just doesn't think about surveillance, right?
Yeah.
I thought about police reform a ton, like growing up Black immigrant in Minneapolis, there's no way not to think about it. But I never really thought about surveillance at like the aspect of that, or just even military equipment or the tools that the police use, right?
Mhm.
And with this coalition, the things we've been trying to drive home is that the tools that the police use should be just as scrutinized as the officers themselves, that it's not just enough to take officers off the street. The whole internal structure is problematic, right? So when I think about race and tech, like after this project and this kind of years-long effort, what I really think is like something one of our testifiers said. We had a public hearing and there were all these amazing testimonies. And this one guy said that it was kind of like trash in, trash out, right? And this idea that the things that we create, the tools that we make, reflect us and they're mirrors of us, right? So when we think of race and tech, there's no wonder why all our technology is so racist. It's a reflection of us. And then you go even deeper and you look at the developers, the people making this kind of technology, and they're not exactly like a diverse subsect of the population. They don't represent the population at all, largely. They're kind of removed from it. They certainly don't have the diversity we have just in Minneapolis. So it's no wonder that the things that they create are not made for people like me or people of color or just anyone who's not them, essentially, right? And then I think the third thing when I think about like race and tech, right, and the things that I've learned from this coalition and this push to ban facial recognition is that like a lot of our technology is kind of, it's meant to solve our problems, right? It's meant to make things easier for us or just solve problems. And a lot of the social problems we have, things like poverty, crime, violence, these are all things that disproportionately affect people of color, right? So a lot of our technology is just targeted at them constantly because there's this kind of overlapping. And then we conflate that. There's this conflation that the problems equal the tech in a way. So once we have like these racist technologies, they're kind of targeted towards communities of color just by happenstance, because that's where all of our social ills are, because we've structurally made a country and kind of an economy and a system
Mhm.
and all these things that really harm communities of color because it was never really designed for them. So it's
Yeah.
kind of this like mesh of like interwoven things. But yeah, that's kind of what I've learned from this.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, I'm in a English 9 classroom, so it's easy to be able to tell students like we need more authors of color, right? We need representation at that table. But what does it look like when we're trying to fight robots, right? In this digital fight, you talked about it a little bit. There's not really anybody that represents those communities of color, and because of that, the people that are creating those technologies are creating them against them. So why is diversity important in this? Going a little bit deeper with that, why should everyone have a seat at the table? And with everyone having a seat at the table, what does that look like for our future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of hints at like, the fact that the developers don't look like you or me, right? So that's kind of a simple solution. I don't really know how you get that done, but I think if you did have people of color at those tables when they're like constructing these technologies and these softwares, I think you would have an array of experiences, right? And it would be kind of and you'd be able to test it out. For example, like facial recognition. If there were people of color at the table, it wouldn't be a question of did this work for them? Of course it would
Yeah.
work for them. Why would you make something that wouldn't work for you? So I don't know how to get people at the table, but I think it shows what happens when you do.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that just even being able to look at in the last couple of years, we've seen so many, looking at non digital rights, we've seen so many people start to bring out foundations that are now reaching so many other people because of their pigmentation and skin color. So, why can't we do that with algorithms? I think that's a good question to be able to have everybody at that table. So, the big question for tonight is why are digital rights civil rights? What does that phrase mean to you when you think about it? If you had a chance to look through that art, what comes to mind? Digital rights being civil rights.
Yeah, absolutely. When I think about digital rights being civil rights, I think of like the role of the digital world in ours, right? And how we kind of live in a digital world now. There's no escaping the internet. You use it for work. You use it for like social media interactions with other human beings. You use it to catch up with people. You use it for entertainment. It's kind of been this all-encompassing thing that's encroached upon
Mhm.
all of our lives in this past like 10 years. So when I think of like digital rights or civil rights, I think of like ethics in tech and why that matters, right?
Yes.
Like it's odd that you would even pose that question of like why does ethics in text matter, because ethics in anything would matter. So for example, like you need laws, you need regulations, you need some kind of guiding system for every facet of our lives. Like you need guidelines for what you can serve at public schools, you
Mhm.
need rules for like child rearing, you need like rules for like not having like lead in your walls or something like that.
Mhm.
We understand that you have to regulate these things in life for the betterment of the group, for the betterment of society. And when you look at like surveillance or technology or this kind of tech world, there's really not a lot of regulation. There's not a lot of laws. All the legislation we have is just woefully behind. And it's kind of like a wild west. There's no curtailing the abuses that could happen with this emerging technologies or just the internet in general. And then I think even deeper to like big tech companies. And there's just a handful, and they kind of
Right.
control, again, every aspect of your life because all aspects of your life are now digital. You look at companies like Facebook and Google and even like the social media, it's like Twitter, like they do kind of control your life, your freedom of speech, your freedom of association. And you see things like people getting banned from like maybe just three sites like Facebook or YouTube or like Twitter. And that really does effectively curtail your rights. It really does infringe upon your civil liberties, your constitutional rights. These tech companies, by just entering every like aspect of your life, can kind of like present these chokeholds where you can't be a full person, where you can't really live a dignified life either. So when we say like civil rights or digital rights or civil rights, I think that's a very appropriate statement. If our lives are now on the internet, if our lives are now even more digital than, you know, they were 10 years ago, it would make sense that we should have some kind of guiding principles or laws or civil rights protections.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you said that wonderfully. Well, I'm really glad that you can join us tonight. I know we're going to be connecting back in a little bit. But once again, congratulations. And I look forward to hearing more of what you have to say later on. So thank you.